back, relax, and maybe get yourself a snack. Me and you gonna have a little chat about books. Hey guys! So I'm here today to do a TBR for the month of November, and November is very exciting to me every year because it is Non-Fiction November, which is a month-long readathon hosted in November by Olive from A Book Olive and Gemma from Non-Fic Books. I'll put links to both their channels and their announcements down below. There are some themes for Non-Fiction November. The prompts are home, love, substance and scholarship. I tend to just ignore the prompts and read whatever non-fiction I have on my shelf every year, and that seems to work quite well for me. So I've got a lot of non-fiction I'm going to be trying to at least attempt to read in November. I don't really aim on getting all of them done by any means. I tend to just pick up what I fancy, so I'm going to do that, but I'm going to show you guys what I have to choose from. I also have a couple of fiction books that I'm planning to get through, so 2 new releases, 2 of my final SBFBO books to get through, and some welcome book prize books. So I'm going to start off with those and tell you a bit about each of them. So the 2 new releases I'd like to get to in the month of November include The Book of Dust, La Belle Sauvage, which is volume 1 by Philip Pullman. This book is the new book in a new series or trilogy by Philip Pullman set before the His Dark Materials series but set in the same world. I am very intrigued. I've read about 40 pages of this, so I'm not very far at all. It's quite a chunky one, but I'm really enjoying what I've read, and I do like the main character of Malcolm so far. He is a young boy who works in his family pub, and at the point where I'm at, he's just met some mysterious men who are on the hunt for an infant. Don't really know more than that, but I'm intrigued, and I'm super looking forward to where the magic kicks in with this world. There are demons in this world, which I love, because that was a massive part of what I loved about His Dark Materials. So I can't wait to kind of find out more about the whole world and where it's all going to go. One other thing to note about this that I didn't show you in my book haul actually because I hadn't realised I had it, is that the cover underneath is gorgeous. So it's got all of these little dots and things. Then the spine has all these words which are a quote from the book. "Ah, it's a proper canoe," said Lord Asriel, as if he'd been expecting a toy. Malcolm felt a little affronted on behalf of La Belle Sauvage and said nothing as he turned her over and let her slip quietly down the grass and onto the water. So I'm guessing from that Lord Asriel is a character in the book later on, which is pretty exciting, I must admit. So this one I'm trying to get through. I'm reading this with Stevie and Winks. I'll link their channels down below, and I'm looking forward to chatting about it with them. Next up, I have another ginormous tome. This one is Oathbringer by Brandon Sanderson. I don't know if you can see the title. There it is. This is the 3rd book in the massive series of Stormlight Archive books. This one is really heavy. It looks shorter, but it's actually been printed on much thinner paper because it's so long that they couldn't bind it on regular paper. It's 1,250 plus pages. It is a huge book. I have started it. I'm about 50 pages into this one. I am enjoying it. It was very easy to get back into. But my god, it is heavy to hold, so I'm taking my time with it, and I'm going to probably spread it out over the next few weeks and hopefully have a review not long after the release date, which I think is the 14th of November, something around there. So yeah, middle of the month, look out for this one being released. Next up, I have my 2 final SBFBO books to read. So the first of those is One by One, which is by Phil Tucker. I don't know an awful lot about this, but I have heard good things about the author, so I'm hopeful that I will enjoy the book when I come to read it. It's fairly short compared to some of the others, so I will let you guys know what I think when I start it. The other one I'm planning to read is T.S. Adrian's Beneath the Silver Rose. Again, it's not an author I know or that I've heard of, so I'm hopeful that I'll like it, but you never know, and I'll tell you more once I've read it. Moving on to the welcome book prize books that Eleanor and I will be reading this month. The first of those is Far From the Tree, which is by Andrew Solomon. I am actually about 60-something% of the way through this and loving it. Completely surprised me. I did not think I was going to like it at all, but I'm really enjoying it so far. It's very informative. It is a very heavy book in terms of it deals with some pretty intense topics. I'll go into more details when I review it, but it is really insightful. It's very interesting. It's really well written, so I'm looking forward to maybe reading some more of his work after this one. provided it all continues in the same vein, of course. Well, at the moment I'm really enjoying it. So the other book that we are planning to read this month is Inconvenient People. This one I think deals with people who were locked away in mad homes and asylums. It does seem to be a non-fiction one, as is Far From the Tree, so they both fit for Non-Fiction November, which is great, and I'm intrigued about this one. This one seems like it could be my cup of tea, so hopefully it is, and hopefully I'll have 2 really good Welcome Book Prize books this month. We shall see. And now, moving on to the stack of non-fiction that I'm going to choose from for Non-Fiction November. So let's just go through these. The first one I have is one I recently did a haul of. It's called Lab Girl, A Story of Trees, Science and Love by Hope Jahren. This book is memoir of her life being a scientist and what she studied, and it's kind of all about how science helped her, from what I understand. It does seem like it would be a very interesting read because I've not read an awful lot about female scientists, and it does seem to be a topic where I would really find interest, so I'm hopeful that I'll like it, and I do love the illustrations and the leaves on the front, so I'm intrigued to find out more about what she actually studied and how she got into it. Next up, another book that I recently hauled called Empires of the Indus, The Story of a River by Alice Albania. This book follows the story of the Indus River, and it follows it throughout various different years, I think through the millennia in fact, kind of from the ancient people and what they did and where they worshipped along the river, all the way through to modern day and kind of what happens now. I'm intrigued about this one. It may be terrible, it may be great, I don't know. I'm hopeful that it's going to be good, but I've never read a story, or a book rather, just about a river, so we'll see. Next up I have The Morning They Came For Us by Janine Di Giovanni. This one is called Dispatches from Syria, and it sounds amazing from what I've heard of this one. It sounds really heartbreaking, really insightful, and I've heard great things about this from Jen at Jen Campbell. I'll link her below. She raved about this when it first came out, and I finally got my hands on a copy. I believe it is real stories from people who have tried to escape Syria or who are still living in Syria. I'm not exactly certain, but I'm really intrigued to kind of educate myself more on the topic of Syria generally, because it is something where I do not know a lot. Next up I have this one, which I think counts as non-fiction because it says in the front that it deals with real life situations in North Korea under the rule of Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il, I always forget their names, the leaders. So this is a collection of short stories called The Accusation by Bandy, and it does deal with stories from inside North Korea of people's lives and suffering and the things they go through. I really don't know anything more than that, except it was smuggled out under this pseudonym, and this person who has written the book is still in North Korea as far as we know. It sounds fascinating. I am always intrigued about North Korea. It's so very different from the life that we know in the Western world, and I can't wait to read it. Hopefully I will be able to give you guys a review on this one very soon. Next up I have a few historical ones, some quite light and some are heavier. So the first of those is Sin in the Second City, Madams, Ministers, Playboys and the Battle for America's Soul by Karen Abbott. I've heard great things about this one from various people. It does sound like it's quite a fun look at the American history of performers and parlours, various different people who were, I guess, really influential madams. I'm very intrigued. I don't know anything more than that, but it sounds good. Next up I have a couple more factual books. So the first of those is Bill Bryson's A Short History of Nearly Everything. I mean, I don't think I need to tell you guys what this is about. It says it's a short history of nearly everything, so I guess that could cover any and everything. We'll see. I think it's going to give me some interesting insights, various different parts of history that I have no knowledge about, so I'm looking forward to trying it. It is quite chunky, so I doubt I'd get through the whole thing unless it's great, but who knows, we'll see. Next up I have another non-fiction one that is historical, and this one is A History of Ancient Egypt from the First Farmers to the Great Pyramid by John Romer. Now this is one of the Penguin books, and I picked this up a little while ago, and I would really like to get round to reading it. I do find just the ancient world, not even specific parts like ancient Egypt, ancient Rome, ancient Greece, all of these places, I find them fascinating, and I think that I've really neglected learning about history of my world since leaving college. I used to study history of art and I loved it. It was my favourite thing to do, and then I gave it up when I went to uni, and I haven't really gone back to studying any of the historical parts of our world, and I would like to do that again. So History of Ancient Egypt is where I'm going to start. Staying with the sort of history theme, the next one I have is The Dragon Seekers, How an Extraordinary Circle of Fossilists Discovered the Dinosaurs and Paved the Way for Darwin by Christopher McGowan. I believe this kind of follows a lot of different fossilists who were discovering bits of dinosaurs and they were kind of interested in what was going on. Their theories actually provided Darwin with a way to kind of rationalise and come up with the idea of evolution. So it sounds very fascinating. I do like the idea of dragon seeking, so hopefully it will be a really insightful read. I guess we'll see. Another kind of historical one is Out of Mao's Shadow by Philip Pan. Last year I read a couple of books on China, including Wild Swans by Zheng Chang. Really loved that book. It was absolutely eye-opening and really interesting and made me want to read more about China, so I picked this one up, but I've not got around to it. I believe this one deals with the time under Mao's shadow and also up to the present day, kind of how things have changed since Mao in China and what people have been doing to shake up things and change things for the better, hopefully. I'm very intrigued about this. It's got a lot of praise on the blurb, so hopefully it is a good one. We'll see. Next up, I have a slightly lighter read because in amongst all these heavy books, you've got to have some light ones. So the first one of those I have is Lost in Translation by Ella Frances Saunders. This is a book all about untranslatable words and it's illustrated by the author, as you can see, and just the word, and then it tells you kind of what it actually means. Even though it's an untranslatable word, it's kind of an expression of what it would be if it was one word in our language. So it's really, really interesting. I've had a flick through this a few times, but I've never sat down and just read it, so I plan to do that hopefully over the course of this month at some point. And speaking of hopefully lighter, fun books, I've heard good things about Caitlin Moran, How to Be a Woman. Never read it, never read any of her books, but I am intrigued. She is quite a funny person from what I've seen of her. She's also quite controversial. I'm intrigued. I don't really know anything more than that about her. I think she's quite into feminism, but I'm not really sure how much I'll agree with her or how much I'll disagree. I've heard controversial things, so I'm excited to try her out and see what I think. And this is my last one that I have currently. I may pick up some others, but these are the ones that I'm going to be choosing between. So please do, if you have any suggestions, either leave them down below, or if you want to help me choose from the ones I've just shown you, leave that down below. I would love your help because there's quite a few here, so I doubt I'll get through them all, but I am super excited to get into some non-fiction. I've been really neglecting it for a while and it feels like it's time. Don't forget, it's also getting graphic on Saturday the 11th, so I will hopefully be reading an awful lot of graphic novels and things like that on the Saturday, and I've already done my TBR for that, so I'll put a link to that below as well. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you very soon in my next video. Bye guys!
Thank you for watching my video today. Go pick up a book, then come back and chat with me again.